When I was working on this album, I went through many phases, and I didn't give the album a name until pretty much 2 hours before I had to submit it. And I've always wanted to keep an open mind on what I would feel at the very tail end of delivering the album. And Telos does have multiple meanings. One of them is accomplishment and reaching your goal, celebrating the human art, and that was what I was feeling for the majority of making the record. I felt like I've accomplished something that I didn't know I could accomplish, creating an album on a level that I wasn't sure I could still do. I was doubting myself. And I wanted it to feel as exciting to myself like those albums felt to me when I grew up listening to them. And then towards the tail end of making Telos, I started feeling the other emotion, which was just that I have exhausted myself so extensively to the point of losing nearly 20 pounds. I couldn't sleep at night. I would wake up at 4 in the morning with the song stuck in my head that I was just working on. It was really kind of traumatizing in a sense for me, and I kind of really resonated with the meaning, the end of Telos. So for a moment, when I was really kind of down because I couldn't sleep, I couldn't eat, and I needed to finish this album, and I needed it to be as good as I wanted it to be, I, for a minute, thought that that might be the last thing I will ever make, that I poured everything I had into it, and that I will never be able to top it, and that this is my last hooray, and I'm going to leave this with the world and sort of, step back. There was a real consideration in my mind of approaching this album that way.
We got some really good shots from it.
Yeah.
We got some good overall press ones too.
Good.
So.
You feel just a little more, Andrew?
I was aimlessly trying to make this album that just didn't feel genuine to me, and I scrapped the entire thing besides one song, Dream Brother, which kind of became a pillar of my album because the whole inspiration behind Dream Brother was this artist, Jeff Buckley, that was so hugely inspiring to me in my life. And that song that was really meaningful to me, and that felt like, well, this is a concept. Making things that are genuinely meaningful to me, that have some sort of connection to my musical education or life. And I sort of started redoing my album from around Dream Brother. And all of a sudden I felt like, oh, there's a concept there. And there was this moment when I kind of cracked the code by saying, this is going to be an album that is purely for me. Whatever that means musically. If there's a 7/8 song, which there is, I wouldn't have figured out a way to make that happen because it's not part of dance culture as much. But it didn't matter because in my world, that is semi-normal. So I'm going to make a song in 7/8 with flutes and whistles and pipes. And I really wanted people to experience what I experienced when I heard a hidden track for the first time. That excitement of, there's more. And we have DSPs these days, and you can't really hide it that much. But when you listen to it and you don't look, I still want you to feel what I felt. So that kind of clicked, and I realized, okay, anything that's coming from the heart is going to be put into this album. And any emotion that I could kind of grasp of what inspired me back in the day, I want to try to recreate in whichever way to let other people feel what I felt back in the day when I was deeply inspired by albums. Muse is an artist who works music this way. They oftentimes will take classical pieces and reinterpret them and make it their own. And to me, it was like, well, if I'm going to reinterpret my favorite classical piece of all time, I'm only going to do it with somebody who does that as well and who inspired me to do that to begin with. And I sent it to Matt, and he sort of said, let me live with this for a little bit. And then I was in the studio working on Shanti when I got a text message like, hey, I wrote a vocal for it, check this out. And then everything changed in that moment because I knew, well, okay, now it's going to be with Matt. And then we spent maybe 4 or 5 revisions of reworking the melody a little bit. Matt wrote the lyrics, and then we were kind of at this path of, well, is this now a you and I collab, or is this going to be a Zedd and Muse collab? So we shared it with the band. The band loved it, and then they recorded their parts in Europe while we were in LA. And it became this entire incredible collaboration where the song had a little lack of humanity. It all felt very programmed until they recorded their parts, and all of a sudden this human element came back into the track that really brought it to life. And yeah, it's like the most emotional album ending that I could imagine for myself, to end with the band that sort of started it all. And yeah, it's a gigantic honor to have the song with Muse. I think if there's one thing that I really wish for Telos, it's that people give it a try to listen to it front to back and not skip around. I think most of the most influential albums in my life were some that were the best when you listen front to back. And they take you on a journey that a playlist will not be able to take you on, because the transitions of the songs are part of the art. To me, making this album was making the 10 songs and then making all the transitions in between. They were like individual songs in themselves. So I really hope people will find 38 minutes of their lives where they just sit down and listen to it front to back and see how that makes them feel. And no matter what emotion it evokes, I'm glad to evoke any emotion. And I think people will hopefully be inspired by what an album can do that, a shuffled way of listening can't.